Sure. Here's the expanded version of key point 1 in a natural and engaging speech style. You ever notice how the quiet ones in the room always seem to be thinking about something bigger? They're not quick to jump in, not eager to fill the silence. But when they do speak, you feel it. Why? Because they've been thinking. They've been processing. See, people who talk less often think more. And that makes all the difference. You ever notice how some people just know how to make you feel heard? Like when you're talking to them, they're not just waiting for their turn, not just nodding along to be polite. No, they're locked in, focused. You can feel it. And that's rare, because most people are too busy thinking about what they want to say next. But the ones who speak less, they listen more, and that changes everything. See, listening isn't just about hearing words. Anybody can hear. But real listening, that's about understanding. It's about being present, about giving someone your full attention, not just your ears. And that's what quiet people do best. They aren't in a rush to respond because they're actually paying attention. They're picking up on the little things. The way you say something, the pauses in between, the emotion behind the words. They catch what others miss. That's why when you talk to someone who truly listens, it feels different. You feel understood, you feel valued, and you walk away thinking, man, that was a real conversation. But when you talk to someone who's just waiting to talk, you can tell. You can feel the difference because there's no connection in that. There's no depth. It's just words bouncing back and forth with no meaning. Now, here's the thing: when you listen more than you speak, people start to trust you. They open up in ways they wouldn't with just anyone. Why? Because they know you're actually hearing them. They know you're not just listening to reply, you're listening to understand. And when people feel understood, they remember that. They respect that. You ever been in a room where everyone's talking over each other? Everyone's trying to be heard, trying to prove they know the most, trying to get their point across first. It's just noise. But then there's that one person sitting back, quiet, taking it all in. And when they finally speak, the whole room stops because everyone knows they've been listening. They've been paying attention. And what they're about to say, is not just noise. It's something that matters. That's the power of listening. That's the power of knowing when to stay quiet. Because when you don't waste your words, when you take the time to truly hear people, your words become more valuable. Your presence becomes more respected. And when you do choose to speak, people listen because they know you've been listening to them first. You ever notice how some people don't have to say much to get your attention? They don't try to be the loudest in the room. They don't jump into every conversation, but somehow they still stand out. There's something about them, something intriguing, something that makes you wonder what's going on in their mind. That's because silence has power, and the ones who speak less, they know how to use it. See, people are naturally curious. When someone doesn't say much, when they don't reveal everything about themselves right away, it makes others want to know more. It creates a sense of mystery, and mystery is powerful. Because when you don't put everything out there, when you don't constantly explain yourself, people start paying closer attention. They watch you. They notice the way you move, the way you react, the way you carry yourself, and that speaks louder than words ever could. The truth is, people who talk too much, who always have something to say, they lose that sense of intrigue. There's no mystery there. You already know what they think, how they feel, what they're going to say next. But the quiet ones, they keep you guessing. They make you wonder. And in a world where everyone is shouting just to be heard, being the one who holds back, that makes you different. That makes you stand out. Now, don't get it twisted. Being mysterious isn't about playing games or trying to be someone you're not. It's about understanding the value of keeping some things to yourself. It's about knowing that not everything has to be said out loud. Some thoughts, some emotions, some experiences, they're yours. And when you don't just give them away freely, when you hold on to them until the right moment, people start to respect that. They start to respect you. Think about it, some of the most powerful people in the world, the ones who truly command attention, they don't waste words. They don't feel the need to explain themselves all the time. They move with confidence, with purpose, and they let their actions do the talking. And that's what makes them unforgettable. That's what makes them different. Because in the end, people remember what they don't know just as much as what they do. They remember the ones who made them think, who made them curious, who made them wonder. And when you understand that, when you learn to embrace the power of silence, you don't have to be the loudest person in the room. You don't have to prove anything to anyone. You just have to be you, and that will always be enough. Most of the time, when people talk too much, they're just reacting. They're throwing words out without truly considering them. But the ones who hold back, the ones who take a pause before speaking, they understand something important. Words carry weight. Every sentence, every thought, every response, it all matters. And if you don't give yourself time to think before you speak, you're just making noise. Now, deep thinkers, they observe, they absorb, they don't rush to prove a point because they're too busy figuring out the right one. They don't just hear what people say, they understand what's behind it. They pick up on details others miss, and when they do speak, their words come from a place of depth, not just impulse. That's why their words stand out. You ever been in a conversation where someone is just waiting for their turn to talk? They're nodding, they're agreeing, but you can tell they're not really listening. They're just waiting for a pause so they can jump in. But quiet people, they're different. They listen because they're trying to understand, not just respond. And when they do respond, you know it's coming from a place of real thought. That's why the most powerful voices don't always have to be the loudest. Because power isn't in how much you say, it's in what you say. Pure saying. You ever notice how the people who don't talk too much always seem to have this sense of control about them? They don't get rattled easily. They don't react to every little thing. While everybody else is quick to argue, quick to prove a point, quick to let their emotions take over, they just stay steady, calm, focused, in control. That's not by accident. That's because people who speak less know something that others don't. Words are powerful, and once they're out, you can't take them back. See, most people react. Something happens, and before they even think, they start talking, defending, explaining, getting caught up in the moment. And when emotions are high, that's when mistakes happen. That's when things get said that shouldn't be said. But the ones who don't speak much, they don't let their emotions drive their words. They take a step back. They breathe. They think. And because of that, they stay in control, not just of the conversation, but of themselves. You ever see two people in an argument? One person is loud, aggressive, trying to overpower the other. But the other, they're just standing there, letting them talk, staying calm. And the more they stay in control, the more the other person starts to lose theirs. That's the power of restraint. That's the power of knowing when to speak and when to stay silent. Because silence, that's strength. It tells people, I don't need to prove myself. I don't need to argue. I know who I am, and that's enough. Now, this isn't about bottling things up. It's not about never expressing yourself. It's about choosing how and when you do it. It's about understanding that reacting out of anger, out of frustration, out of impulse, that's never going to get you the outcome you want. But when you take your time, when you think before you speak, when you control your words instead of letting your words control you, that's when you really start to own the moment. That's when you start moving differently. Because the truth is, the strongest people aren't the ones who yell the loudest, who argue the most, who always have to have the last word. No, the strongest people are the ones who stay steady, who stay clear-headed, who don't let outside noise shake their inner peace. And the ones who speak less, they know how to do that better than anyone. You ever notice how some people don't say much, but when they do, everybody listens? It's not because they have the loudest voice, not because they demand attention. It's because they've mastered the power of saying exactly what needs to be said. No more, no less. See, when you don't speak all the time, when you're not constantly filling the air with words, people start paying closer attention when you do decide to speak. Your words carry more weight because they're not just noise, they have purpose. Most people talk just to talk. They repeat themselves, they say things without thinking. They try to impress others with how much they know. But the ones who don't speak much, they don't waste words. They make every sentence count. And that's why when they open their mouth, people stop and listen. Because they know this person doesn't speak unless they have something worth saying. You ever been in a meeting, in a room full of people, and there's that one person who barely says anything, they're just sitting there, listening, thinking. And then after everyone else has talked themselves in circles, they finally speak. And when they do, it's like everything just clicks. It's sharp. It's to the point. And you realize that's the only thing that needed to be said. That's the kind of communication that makes an impact. Now, the reason quiet people are such effective communicators isn't just because they speak less, it's because they listen more. They take in everything before they respond. They don't rush to say the first thing that comes to mind, and that makes their words more precise, more meaningful. They understand that communication isn't about saying the most, it's about saying the right thing at the right time. See, when you're careful with your words, when you take the time to really think before you speak, you start commanding more respect. People start valuing what you have to say because they know it's not just empty talk. It's real. It's intentional. And in a world where everybody's trying to be heard, the person who speaks with purpose, that's the person who stands out the most. You ever notice how some people seem to see things others, don't they? Pick up on the small details. They understand situations before anyone else does. And they always seem to have this quiet confidence about them. It's not because they're lucky. It's not because they have some special gift. It's because they take the time to observe. They're not too busy trying to be heard, not too caught up in proving themselves. They sit back, they watch, they learn. And that makes them sharp. That makes them aware. See, when you talk too much, you miss things. You're so focused on what you're saying, on what you're going to say next, that you don't see what's happening around you. But the ones who speak less, they're paying attention. They see people for who they really are, not just who they pretend to be. They notice what's not being said just as much as what is, and that kind of awareness, that's powerful. Because when you understand people, when you understand situations, you make better decisions. You ever met someone who just seems to know exactly when to move, when to speak, when to act? No, it's not a coincidence. It's because they've been watching, thinking, analyzing. While everyone else was rushing, reacting, making mistakes, they were learning. And when the moment came, they were ready. That's the difference between moving blindly and moving with purpose. But it's not just about understanding others. It's about understanding yourself. The more time you spend listening instead of talking, the more you start to hear your own thoughts clearly. You start to see your strengths, your weaknesses, your habits, your patterns. You learn what drives you, what holds you back. And when you know yourself, truly know yourself, nobody can shake you. Nobody can tell you who you are because you already figured that out. Most people go through life without ever really paying attention. They're too distracted, too caught up in the noise. But the ones who take the time to be still, to observe, to reflect, they move differently. They carry themselves with a different energy, and that's why they don't need to say much. Because their presence alone speaks louder than words ever could. In a world full of noise, the ones who speak less stand out the most, not because they're silent, but because they understand the value of words. They think deeply before they speak, they listen more than they talk, and they let their presence do the work. They don't waste energy trying to prove themselves, they let their actions speak louder. And that makes them powerful. See, the quiet ones aren't weak, they're not unsure, they're in control. They don't let emotions dictate their words, they don't react, they respond. And because they speak with purpose, their words carry weight. People listen, people remember. They move with a sense of mystery, making others wonder what's going on in their mind. They stay aware of others, of situations, of themselves. They notice what most people miss, and that gives them an edge. So if you want to be truly heard, if you want your words to matter, don't focus on saying more, focus on saying what matters. Because in the end, it's not about how much you speak, it's about how much impact your words leave behind.